Greetings from Songdo. My name is Lihalakha, Interim Head of the Independent Integrity Unit of the Green Climate Fund. I'm delighted to join you today at the 2022 Caribbean Conference on Corruption, Compliance, and Cybercrime, with the opportunity to share insights about our work on integrity in climate finance projects and on maladaptation. To help set the scene, it's important for us to understand the impacts of corruption on climate projects and how integrity values are important in climate action. I invite you to listen to the Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund, Mr. Yannick Glameric, as he spoke to us at the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
Corruption kills, and not figuratively, literally. And what are some of the immediate impacts of corruption on our fight to avert catastrophic climate change? The first thing is that corruption destroys trust, destroys social capital. Corruption weakens the legitimacy of public policies. And in climate change, we will have to basically go through four gigantic transitions: the energy transition, the food system transition, the infrastructure transition, and the ecological transition. We will have to ensure that these transitions are just, are fair. And when you have no legitimacy for your climate policies, you are simply going for a disaster. The second thing is that more well known, a lot of our investment will have to be in infrastructure, will have to be in asset creation, and it's traditionally an area that is plagued by corruption. Climate-friendly infrastructure will be particularly vulnerable to corruption. Why? Because by and large, we know how to design an infrastructure in a stable climate. You have basically 300 years of established track record, and you can simply have a look at the cost and say, that doesn't seem right. Or you can have a look at the proposed infrastructural design and say, no, that doesn't seem right, because you have a huge built-in knowledge that enable a competent engineer immediately to say, there's something there. It's not the case when we speak about climate resilient infrastructure. We are basically speaking about new climate solution, and we simply do not know how to optimize the design of infrastructure in times of climate crisis. We will have to take risk. We will have to try new design. And if already it's very difficult, it will be extremely difficult for the asset managers, for the engineers, for the financiers to get it right without corruption. To get it right with corruption will be impossible. And the net result will be that rather than, for example, defending 50 kilometers of coastline, we will defend only 5. And we will expose all the population for the remaining 45 kilometers to extreme weather events. Another reason why corruption can basically ruin our effort to avert catastrophic climate change is basically in terms of transaction cost. When you don't have trust, you will not decentralize decision making. And why we know that it's extremely important to decentralize decision making, to decentralize finance. In the absence of trust, in the absence of system, there will be a tendency for almost every single government, every single financier to say, okay, I want to control everything because I'm not so sure about what will happen. And last but not least, there is a huge climate finance gap. And we have to address this climate finance gap. Only one of the barriers to this, bridging this finance gap is basically the risk of the perception of corruption risk. Every time there is a perception of corruption, basically the price of money increases. So rather than having access to capital at, let's say, 8%, for 10 years, suddenly it will be 12, 14% for 5 years. And a project that was bankable at 8% for 10 years is no more bankable at 12% for 5 years. And therefore, we are not even speaking about 5 kilometers versus 50 kilometers. We're speaking about 0 kilometers at all. So it's one of the most powerful tools that we have in our hands to scale up climate action is actually integrity in climate action.
The GCF is working towards its commitment to deliver a balanced portfolio of both mitigation and adaptation projects. This calls for a greater need to ensure accountability, safeguard projects from integrity threats, and issues such as maladaptation.
The world is in the grip of the climate crisis. Both predictable and unpredictable impacts are unfolding across continents. One way to mitigate the impact is through adaptation, projects that adjust the actual or expected effects of climate change. For small island developing states, African states, and least developed countries, adaptation is crucial. According to estimates, the cost is likely to range from $140 to $300 billion annually by 2030. The Green Climate Fund has committed to delivering 50% of its financing to climate adaptation that prioritizes vulnerable countries. The significant amount of investment raises the risk for corruption, mismanagement, and integrity failures. In turn, it may result in maladaptation. Maladaptation aggravates existing climate risks or creates new unintended risks for the communities in the area. Take this example. A government agency financed an adaptation project to relocate nomad communities from areas vulnerable to floods and droughts. But the program ended up disrupting their lives, alienating them from their traditional lands and water resources. Vested interests of decision-makers, coupled with corrupt behavior of high-level public officials, resulted in widespread discrimination against minorities, causing conflict, violence, and human rights violations. Although a mix of factors result in maladaptation, we also see integrity failure, a cross-cutting issue, as a significant cause. We need to ensure that integrity and anti-corruption measures are embedded in the projects from beginning to end. Corrupt decision-making in adaptation projects and programs may be driven by opportunities to make money, short-term political agendas, the capture of resources and power, or opaque decision-making that excludes vulnerable groups, minorities, women, and youth. Powerful lobbies from dominant sectors like mining, agriculture, or the water sector can assert their influence in the process. Some adaptation projects can only be sham adaptation, designed to benefit only a few. As climate action and integrity champions, what can we do? First, we advocate for further research across key adaptation sectors to understand the consequences of corruption. Second, we identify best practices and share lessons learned in reducing corruption. Third, we encourage collective action at the global, national, and local levels to reduce corruption risks. Fourth, we develop tools and undertake integrity risk assessments to mitigate integrity failures. Fifth, we ensure greater transparency in project monitoring and inclusive participation in the decision-making and accountability process. And finally, we promote zero tolerance for corruption by imposing consequences and corrective measures. We also champion whistleblower protection and encourage people to report prohibited practices. The need for adaptation is urgent. We must act together to safeguard these projects for our planet.
In the Caribbean and Latin American regions, the GCF has committed financing of 56 projects totaling of $3 billion, of which $532 million is intended for adaptation projects. With over $10 billion in assets under management and an urgent need to tackle climate emergencies, it is our collective responsibility to mitigate and respond to integrity issues and prevent maladaptation in order to maximize the benefits of climate finance. Preventing integrity risks and maladaptation requires a multifaceted approach. Early interventions in project design and appropriate environmental and social safeguard studies help mitigate maladaptation issues and the application of innovative technical approaches such as artificial intelligence and machine learning can help identify anomalous activities that point to instances of fraud and corruption. The IIU pursues innovation and increased efficiency in the conduct of its proactive integrity reviews by employing data analytics, machine learning, and intelligent automation in risk assessment and detection of red flags. Knowledge sharing and strategic partnerships remain an important tool. The IIU's developed knowledge products to encourage further discourse on emerging integrity issues and promotes peer exchanges to expand networks and share best practices. Collective action warrants empowered participation by all stakeholders. It is important to foster a culture of integrity, promote transparency, empower whistleblowers and witnesses to monitor and report corrupt practices. The GCF, through the IIU, provides accessible reporting channels in multiple languages and has a robust integrity policy framework. In the event of violations of prohibited practices, the GCF provides an opportunity for reform when imposing corrective actions, as specified in its administrative remedies and exclusion policy. And finally, the GCF aims to encourage collective action by global, regional, and local levels to prevent corruption. At COP27, the IIU took the first steps in providing civil society an opportunity to ensure accountability and transparency in the planning and implementation of climate projects. The IIU recognizes the value of civil society promoting integrity in climate action and encouraging force multipliers in the fight against corruption. The reality is that there remains a long road ahead of us in the fight against climate change. In the process, we must ensure that no one gets left behind and that vulnerable communities receive relief and readiness from climate finance. Make every climate action count. Our collective expertise, knowledge, and skill will build towards the goal of integrity in climate action. 0% corruption, 100% climate action. To the conference organizers, under the capable leadership of Dr. Toussaint Boyce, IIU appreciates the opportunity to have taken part in this important event. We wish all the conference participants a productive and enjoyable engagement. Thank you.